It's good to be here at ProcureCon, and it's been great to have the opportunity to engage with a number of you over the last few days. As mentioned, I'm with SDI. We're a business process outsourcer in the MRO space. I joined the company earlier this year, in part because of the value proposition and the opportunity that it created for me. But what is the MRO marketplace? And you know, there's some great statistics, lots of numbers up here, $150 billion. You break that down into many of your organizations, it's probably a much smaller number. But it's a space in which there's literally millions of SKUs. It's a highly fragmented space. It's a space in which it's heavily transactionally driven. And it's a space in which companies can and do tie up a lot of inventory and potentially have a lot of obsolescence issues in that inventory. But most interesting in the conversations that I've had this week from many CPOs and others of the senior leaders, they just simply say it's not on my radar. You know, I hear the old 80-20. I've been around procurement for about 27 years. I know the 80-20 rule. That's how we kind of manage. That's the way we've looked at things. And that definitely comes into play here. But from the sense of really what's an ideal MRO program, it's a program that probably, if you've been in the direct materials, you'll get this, right? It's having the right part at the right place at the right time at the lowest total cost of ownership. What does that sound like? That sounds like the way we manage direct materials in most organizations. It sounds like the way that Toyota or Dell might manage their supply base in terms of what they need, right? But within the MRO space, that's really been hard to achieve in most organizations. And why is that the case? Well, I'd say that there's a few reasons. First of all, MRO supply is not really seen as mission critical, and it's therefore not managed as something that's strategic, right? It's considered non-core in most organizations. It's managed as a spend category rather than as an element of a supply chain that needs to be looked at and that can be optimized in some fashion. And we know, as SDI, we know the data in this space is one of the biggest challenges. I think data across all of procurement can be a challenge, but in this space it is an extraordinary one given the large number of manufacturers, manufacturer part numbers, and the identification of those across different systems within the same organization or across organizations. There's no common language in which we all operate. There's really no measurement and management outside of, and unfortunately this is probably the procurement guy's fault, that piece part price reduction. What am I doing year over year and looking at it solely on a piece part versus looking at it in a bigger picture and understanding its strategic importance to an organization. Why do we have the challenges in an organization? Because we all know this, right? There's a number of competing agendas and interests. Procurement and supply chain may not always own inventory. That may be owned by finance. Procurement's looking to minimize the number of suppliers and optimize the price that we pay. But our engineering teams are looking for what they consider to be the best quality part. They may not be willing to look at a like-for-like form, fit, and function substitution. The storeroom, the maintenance guys, they're looking at availability. All they care about is it when I need it? I've got a maintenance problem. So there's some real competing agendas and conflicting interests. I think as procurement, this is probably the best place for us to step in. When we talk, and as I've heard discussion during this week about running sourcing events and collaborating with our internal clients, we have the opportunity here to be the glue in this organization to bring about the project management and the leadership of these various silos and portions of the organization and to bring that together to bring about a different kind of result. So a little more on that, right? Those silos. I'd put procurement in one of those, right? We're a silo sometimes. We're good at that, right? We look at things from a cost savings perspective. Finance is only looking at inventory costs. Manufacturing is only looking at, do I have that part when I need it? And they don't care how many parts sit in that storeroom. Their attitude is, but I got to have it right now. It's that one part, and it may be that case. We have clients where we know as we work with them that, you know, and I'm sure this is true across any organization that does any sort of manufacturing, you know exactly what the cost of that downline time is. Could be $1,000 an hour, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 an hour that line is down. So you've got to be very careful about how you manage and optimize that, right? So there's a bunch of suboptimal practices across this. The organization, and those behaviors really don't change until we see it as an enterprise issue. So what are those consequences? Kind of an eye chart probably from out there, but you know, lots of unnecessary freight costs, maverick spend, non-compliance to agreements, all kinds of loss of maintenance and labor productivity, inflated costs. But those are all things that are a part or a potential consequence. So what's changing? What's changing is that there's a number of different things going on within manufacturing organizations. Pricing and margin pressures continue. We continue to see changes in the competitive landscape for all of our organizations. We know that this new global competition is something that we've been responding to and will need to continue to respond to. Rising customer demands and expectations. And disruptive innovation and acceleration of automation or other types of changes. Some of the things that Mike was talking about earlier change, that constant. A broadening of adoption of operational excellence practices, and a realization that MRO really can affect overall equipment effectiveness and the effectiveness of an organization, as well as the emergence of more purpose-built supply chain management technologies and more specialization in this area. So those are some of the changes. I think the one thing that probably failed to put up here on this, it was really about risk management. And this needs to be seen as part of our overall view of risk to your organization and managing that fine balance of inventory and cost to operate with the understanding of risk to your manufacturing environment. So we have all those things. You have the silos. You have all of the various competing interests and agendas. But the question is, you know, how do we address those things? As an organization, we've got to really reframe the way we view MRO. And by looking at it as an end-to-end supply chain rather than as a piece part approach, or they've got inventory and I've got cost and they've got maintenance responsibility. We need to bring that unit, those groups together into a more holistic view. So it's a messy space. It's one where what I'll call the tyranny of the tactical can really become overwhelming and blot out the strategic view of things and that bigger picture thinking that we need to bring to it. So, you know, I talked a little bit about those various silos and the challenges, but what I want to do is to wrap it up. I've given you that insight. I want to wrap it up in why there's a case for MRO BPO as an organization. So this is a case study from one of our clients. They're the one of the largest cereal manufacturers in the world. What do you do here, right? It's hard to ignore the 203% ROI, but how do you get there? You get there through data cleansing and master data management. You get there by doing a better job of sourcing and building supplier relationships in this space. You get there through being effective and efficient with your transactional services, by providing engineering, doing reliability studies, value engineering, reverse engineering of items within the space. You do inventory optimization through predictive looking at historical use of elements as well as their manufacturing environment. You take on different things in terms of storeroom management services and the optimization of that, and you bring about other innovations. Right? What are the other benefits you're going to see? Those operating costs, the inventory, transaction volumes. So in this space, as we as supply chain professionals look at what are the opportunities, this is something that for many of you in the room is nowhere on your radar screen, but it may be a place where there's an opportunity for an organization to bring about innovation in the way that they think, to bring about innovation in the way that they manage the supply chain, and to therefore drive value for their organization through risk reduction, through inventory optimization, better use of cash within an organization. And and it's this kind of ROI that gets folks' attention internally within an organization and says, maybe this is something we ought to look at as a strategic project that can bring value to our business. So I want to thank you for your time. If there's questions, I'd be glad to take some.